The stars were burning and the galaxy was falling apart. The enemy had come like a storm, without warning, without mercy. They were called the Varnuk, and no one truly understood what they were. Some believed they were machines, others thought they were living nightmares, but one thing was clear: wherever they went, destruction followed. On the planet Kalthara, a once strong world now lay in ruins. Its skies blackened with ash, and the screams of the dying echoed in every direction. Admiral Tenor of the Draxan fleet stood on a hill looking over the broken city. His 4 eyes were wide with disbelief. His armor was scorched, his hands shaking behind his back. The Varnuk had not even used full force yet, and still they crushed everything in their path. Reports came from other sectors. The Zuran fleet's gone, the Brelan Empire begging for help. The proud warriors of the Athari crushed in a single night. No defense worked, no plan lasted more than a few minutes before the Varnuk adapted. They learned fast, they killed faster. The Galactic Alliance called for an emergency meeting. All leaders arrived in silence. Usually the council hall buzzed with voices, but now the silence was thick like a storm waiting to break. The Supreme Chancellor, a long-bodied being with crystal skin, stood at the center. Her voice tried to remain strong, but the crack showed. "We are losing," she said flatly. "The enemy has taken 43 systems in 3 cycles. If they reach the core worlds, we are finished." No one replied. Everyone knew it was true. Weapons, shields, even mind tech, nothing worked against the Varnuk. They could not be reasoned with or delayed. General Overrak, a wise old alien from the Brask species, slowly stood. His scales were pale, his voice low but full of history. He looked around the room, his eyes meeting each leader one by one. "There is one option," he said, and at once the entire chamber turned toward him. But his next words made them freeze in fear. "Unleash." The humans' gasps filled the hall. Some whispered. Others shook their heads. One shouted, "Are you insane? Humans are not a solution." Someone said, "They are a problem we buried long ago. They were sealed away for a reason." Another added, "We couldn't control them. They were dangerous." Too wild, too cruel. Vorak raised his hand. "Yes, they were dangerous. But tell me, is the Varnuk not worse? Are we not facing something even more dangerous?" Now a silence followed again. Everyone remembered the old war. The last time the humans were called to fight, they had ended the war, but at a price too high. Entire moons burned, black holes created by human hands, just to win, just to survive. The council had made a deal with them afterward, a secret pact. The humans would go into exile, kept in a special prison far from the stars. No species would contact them again. No war would need them again. Until now. Chancellor stared at the stars map behind her, watching one system after another blink out in red. "We said we would never open that vault," she whispered then. "We will all burn with our honor intact," Overak replied calmly. Captain Serix, a young officer, stepped forward, trembling slightly. He was from a peaceful race trained in diplomacy, not war. But even he could see the writing on the wall. "Where are they?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Overak turned slowly. "A cold, distant moon, Cortex 7. They sleep beneath its surface." Waiting, no one moved for a long moment. Then finally the Chancellor gave the order, "Send a ship, contact them. Tell them we need them." And as Syrinx walked out of the chamber to begin a mission that could change everything, one thought echoed in his mind. Who are these humans really? What kind of weapon had they sealed away in the far darkness of the galaxy where the moon? Cortex 7 spun in silence. A red light flickered deep under the ice. In a massive chamber, untouched by time, something ancient opened its eyes. They had been forgotten, but now they were being called again. War had reached its last resort, and the monsters of old were about to rise. The journey to Cortex 7 was long and cold, but Captain Serix did not look away from the black window of his ship as the stars moved slowly past him. He kept thinking about the stories he had heard when he was younger, stories told in whispers in secret places about the humans, the cursed species, the ones who fought like demons and smiled while covered in blood. Stories about how they turned the tide of the last great war and then vanished into the dark. No one ever said what happened to them. Not truly, just legends. Some said they were destroyed. Some said they were locked away far from all living things, and now here Syrinx was heading to a place no one dared mention to open a door no one ever wanted to open again. His ship broke through the atmosphere of the frozen moon, the engines howling against the thick ice clouds, and down below the surface. He could see strange marks carved into the mountainsides, shapes not made by machines. But hands, human hands, they were waiting, they were ready. He landed in silence. His soldiers were nervous, even though they had weapons, even though they were trained. Something about this place made their skin crawl as they moved through the icy tunnel. Toward the core of the facility, their breath turned white, and the lights flickered. The deeper they went, the colder. It got not just the cold of air, but something deeper, a kind of silence that felt alive, like the prison itself was watching them. Reached the gate. It was massive, black stone and metal fused together with no visible control panel. Syrinx took a slow breath, then raised the old activation key, a device pulled from ancient vaults. It pulsed once, then fell still. The ground trembled. And with a deep groan, the gate began to open, and the smell that came out was old, not rotten, not foul, but heavy, like dust burned by war and memory. Inside stood a wide chamber, and in the center of it stood a group of figures, unmoving, silent at first. Their bodies tall and strong, wrapped in worn armor different from anything modern. Some had scars deep across their arms and faces. One held a broken helmet in her hand, her eyes glowing faintly, and Syrinx realized this was no army, it was a pack of hunters. The woman stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but sharp like a knife through paper. "Who are you and why have you come?" Captain Syrinx tried to speak, but his words stuck in his throat. These were not like any beings he had seen before. Their presence was thick, as if the air bent around them. Finally he forced the words out. "I am Captain Syrinx of the Galactic Alliance, and we have come to request your help." Woman raised an eyebrow. "Request? That's a polite word for it." She stepped closer, her boots echoing through the chamber. The others behind her did not move, but their eyes followed every twitch, every breath Syrinx took. There was no light in their prison, only the glow of old power lines. And still the human stood proud, like they never left the battlefield. She circled him once, then looked toward her people. "We are free now, it seems. The stars must be dying for them to come back to us." Syrinx lowered his head. "They are. The enemy is worse than anything we've seen. We can't stop them. They adapt, they overwhelm us, and you want us to fight for you," the woman said slowly. "Not for us," Syrinx said quickly. "For the galaxy, for life, for everyone." There was a pause, then she laughed, but it was not cruel. It was tired and deep. "You locked us away because you feared us, because we reminded you of what you are capable of." She looked around at the others, and they nodded slightly. Then she looked back at Syrinx. "We will fight, not for your counsel, not for your pride, but for the silence that should follow when the enemy is gone." "What is your name?" he asked. "Rena Chase," she said. And then she turned. "Humans, prepare, we go to war again." Syrinx backed away, slowly, his heart pounding. The gate closed behind him, and the cold wind returned. But this time it carried something different. Not fear, not regret, but power, ancient and burning. Just below the surface and deep inside the prison, the humans began to wake one by one, stretching, moving, whispering names of enemies and battles. Long forgotten, their weapons old, but deadly, their minds clear, their purpose sharp. Outside, the moon began to crack open as the human warship, hidden for centuries, powered up once again with fire in its engines and rage in its heart. Galaxy had forgotten them. Now it would remember. The monsters were coming, and this time they were on our side. The warship rose like a ghost from the ice of Cortex 7, its engines silent at first, then roaring as ancient systems came to life after centuries of stillness. Lights blinked back on, and weapons hummed with low hunger. Inside the ship, the humans stood in rows, checking gear that had not failed in all the years of darkness. They did not cheer, they did not smile. This was not celebration, it was routine. Battle was a language they still remembered, every motion, a word, every step, a sentence written in the blood of enemies. Captain Syrinx sat inside the command chamber, across from Major Rena. Chase, she did not sit like other officers of the Alliance. She leaned forward, arms crossed, eyes scanning him like a puzzle she had already solved, and was waiting for the pieces to admit it themselves. Behind her stood her second in command, a tall man with one eye and a scar running down his neck. Syrinx tried not to flinch under his stare. "We are ready," she said finally, "but we will not fight without terms." Syrinx nodded. "We expected that. What do you want?" "Full pardon for all humans, not just those in this unit, but everyone in every prison, vault, and camp across the galaxy," she said clearly. No hesitation, no pause. Syrinx opened his mouth, but she raised a hand and continued. "Second, we do not answer to your command. We choose our battles. We lead our own way. Third, once the war is over, we go free. No chains, no watchers, no more hiding." Syrinx took a breath. "These are high demands. We are not asking for a favor," she replied. "You came to us. You broke the lock. We are your last hope. Remember that, and treat us like I've." Looked down, then slowly nodded. "I will deliver your terms to the council." And he left knowing he had no choice. The council argued, screamed, threatened. But in the end, the vote passed because there was no other path left. The Varnock had taken more systems in days, and now they were moving toward the inner colonies. Entire cities already prepared for evacuation as the Black Swarm approached. And now a new question began to spread through every race, every fleet, every corner of space. Could the humans really stop them? To answer that, the Alliance gave the humans a test sector, one small planet under Varnock control, with heavy patrols and growing nests. Every species had failed to reclaim it. Syrinx called it Operation Emberfall, but the humans renamed it Hunt 1. They did not use standard drop pods. They used old iron shells packed with explosives to smash into the ground at speed. Their boots hit the surface, and within moments, the battlefield was on fire. They did not form lines. They did not wait for orders. They split into packs, moved like shadows, and when they struck, they vanished before the enemy could react. The Varnock had no fear, no emotion, but they hesitated when they fought the humans because something felt wrong. Something did not follow the rules. They knew they expected resistance. They got rage. They expected fear. They got laughter. Rena Chase moved through the battlefield like a storm, her blade soaked in black fluid, her voice calm. As she marked targets, her team answered without delay, moving in perfect, brutal rhythm. They burned the nests, they tore down the signal towers, and they left warnings carved into the ruins. Messages in human languages that said, "We are here, and we are not done." From orbit, Syrinx and other officers watched the live feed in complete silence. No one spoke, no one moved. Even hardened generals blinked in disbelief as they saw the footage. Humans taking down entire squads with hand weapons, planting traps that lured Varnock into firestorms, using their own fallen as bait. Final moment of the battle came when a massive Varnock Guardian, over 20 feet tall, charged toward the last remaining nest, but it never reached it. Rena jumped from a rooftop, landed on its back, drove her blade through its spine, and rode it to the ground, her face covered in ash, her voice cold as she whispered, "Checkmate." Feed cut to static, and the control room sat in silence until someone whispered, "Are they even real?" Syrinx did not answer, because deep inside he had seen something. Not just skill, not just training, but joy. The humans did not fight to survive. They fought because it was what they were made to do. Later, when he returned to the command ship, Rena was already waiting, her armor still dripping with enemy blood. He sat across from her again and said, "They have accepted your terms. You are free to continue as you see fit." She nodded, then looked up at the stars. One system down, thousands to go. And Syrinx knew something had changed, not just in the war, but in the galaxy itself, because now the humans were back, and nothing would be the same. The galaxy watched in silence as the reports from Emberfall spread through every system, every station, every screen. It was not just victory, it was impossible, overwhelming, and terrifying. What the humans had done in 3 days, the other species had failed to do in 3 months. News anchors refused to speak their names directly. Military analysts showed footage on loops and tried to explain it, but no words were enough, because what the humans did could not be measured in tactics or logic. It was like watching a story from ancient times come alive again. Full of fire and fury on the Varnock command ships, the hive minds paused transmissions for the first time in their history. They replayed human battle patterns, studied their methods, but there was something missing, something they could not understand. Humans broke patterns, humans changed plans without reason, humans adapted without technology, they laughed in pain, they moved in chaos, but the chaos had meaning beneath it. And that was something no machine, no swarm, no code could break. The Varnock began altering their behavior, pulling back from small outposts, building larger hives, moving in silence. But it was already too late. The humans had their scent, and they were not going to stop now. They were not just weapons, they were predators on the diplomatic front. Species who had once called humans dangerous began to whisper different words. Some said saviors, others said nightmares, a few called them the answer, but all agreed they had never seen anything like it, not even in the darkest wars of the past. Captain Syrinx walked through the central base on Calros Prime, where officers had gathered for a strategy session. All of them looked different now, more serious, more afraid, not of the Varnock, but of what had been brought back from the cold. He entered the chamber and saw the council seated, already watching the feed from Hunt 2, where the humans were now operating on a jungle planet overrun with Varnock nests and strange weather storms. They are not just winning, a general said slowly. They are hunting them. This is not defense. This is extermination. Chancellor Linara leaned forward, her crystal skin glowing faintly and her voice quiet but sharp. I gave them freedom under one condition. The war ends, and then they disappear. Again, what if they don't? Syrinx asked without blinking. Silence fell over the room again, because no one had an answer. Back in the jungle of Hunt 2, Rena Chase knelt beside a dying Varnock corpse, her fingers brushing across its cracked armor as she studied the new tech it was using. Their learning, she said softly, but not fast enough. Her team moved like ghosts between trees, dropping charges, setting traps, using wind and rain as part of their ambushes. The local resistance forces who had been holding the line before the humans arrived now stood back in awe. They had tried to fight with honor and structure and almost died, but the humans showed them a different way. Not evil, not blind, just pure, clear survival. You move like beasts, one alien soldier said to a human scout after a joint raid. And the scout only smiled. Beasts win, he replied. Soon more species began requesting human squads for their defense, asking for shadow teams to train their soldiers. Even governments that once feared them now sent encrypted messages offering resources, weapons, support, anything to stay on the good side of the storm. But Rena Chase was not interested in politics. She sat each night with her team around low fires, going over maps, intel, plans. Their eyes tired but sharp, they spoke little, shared glances more than words, and when they moved out again, it was like the storm had simply changed direction on the Varnock side. Panic began to grow. Even if they did not feel emotion like organic species, did their calculations began to fail, their predictions shattered each time the humans acted. Nothing made sense, nothing stayed the same. In one recorded message intercepted by Alliance spies, a Varnock leader stated clearly, humans are not logical, humans are not a system, humans are an infection and must be erased at any cost. But that was the problem. They had tried before and failed, and now the humans were not just fighting back. They were enjoying it. They had nothing to lose and everything to break. Across the galaxy, soldiers began carving new symbols into their armor, marks of the humans. Some wore human patches, others adopted their sayings. Fear is a weapon, pain is a teacher, silence is a kill shot. Heaven. Among civilians, strange stories began to spread of human teams appearing in dead zones, clearing entire hives and vanishing before dawn like war spirits. Some people started praying to them, others warning children not to speak of them too loud, as if they might appear through the walls. And far above it all, in her command chamber, Rena stared at the stars one by one, each system marked for the next hunt. Her voice calm as she whispered into the comms, open the next gate, we move at first light. The galaxy had changed. Shockwave had begun and no one knew what would be left when the humans were done. The stars were quieter now, not because the war was ending, but because the galaxy had stopped talking, stopped questioning, stopped doubting. The humans were no longer a secret. They were a force moving through space like a burning wave, but even fire leaves behind ashes, and not every victory was clean behind. Every mission, behind every kill, there was something being lost, something no one outside the human teams could see or feel on. The rocky plains of Volta 6, Rena Chase walked. Alone for a moment, her armor cracked her helmet under one arm. The wind blew sharp across the ruins of what used to be a Varnock birthing nest, now just blackened stone and broken bone. Her team had won again, but not without cost. One of their youngest had fallen. His name was Jace, only 20. When the war began, he had been quiet, smart, always adjusting explosives with a grin, like solving puzzles in his mind. Now he was gone, not even a full body to carry home, just a tag and a photo stored in Rena's wristpad. She sat down on a broken wall, staring into the smoke, her eyes not tearing, but heavy, like they carried a storm inside her. She remembered Jace's last words before the mission. "Hey Major, when this is over, I want to build a farm somewhere. Green and soft, maybe even teach kids how to grow things without fire." But this war had no end in sight. Not yet, and farms were dreams people like Rena were not made for dreams. They were built for endings. And the only thing she knew how to plant was fear. Captain Serex arrived an hour later, his face more tired than usual, his rank badges dimmed from travel and stress. He stood beside her for a long moment. Before speaking, "Another win," he said softly. "Another loss," Rena replied without looking at him. "You told me once you came to us, because you had no choice. Now you have a choice: pull us back, or keep feeding the fire." Serex said nothing because he had seen what happened when the humans stayed back. Systems fell, populations vanished, peace talks were meaningless with the Varnock, and without the humans there would be no one left to hold the line. The council had already started new arguments, whispers about human expansion, about how they were getting too strong too fast, but no one dared speak it aloud in front of the survivors. They had seen what humans could do. They had also seen what happened when you crossed them. At the edge of the base, 3 local fighters were watching the humans clean their weapons. They had fought side by side during the assault, and now the aliens stood in silence, unsure whether to say goodbye or say thank you. Finally, one stepped forward and placed a small medal on the crate beside the humans. "This is our highest honor," he said, voice shaking, and the humans just nodded once and went back to their task. They did not fight for medals. They did not fight for applause. They fought because someone had to, because they had been born in a world where fighting was breathing, where losing meant extinction, and where peace was just the silence between wars. Later that night, as the team rested around a low heat coil, Rena spoke for the first time in hours. Her voice was steady, but quiet. "We lost a good one today." The others looked down. A few nodded. One pressed a hand against their chest where Jace's patch had been sewn in upside down, a sign of remembrance. "We keep moving," she said, "because stopping means forgetting, and forgetting means it happens again." Miles above, in the council's shadow station, debates grew louder. Some wanted to limit the humans, push them back, contain their power. But others argued with fear in their eyes, saying you don't cage fire when you're still freezing. You let it burn and hope it doesn't turn around. The Varnock, on the other hand, had changed. They no longer advanced without care. Now they built walls, deeper traps. They began using decoys, tricks, things they had never needed before. It was fear, not emotion, but calculation, survival. Even a hive mind knows when death is coming in forms it cannot solve. A new plan was born. The largest Varnock city in this region was discovered, a hive heart deep inside a collapsed asteroid field with layers of living defenses and energy clouds too thick for normal fleets. But the humans were already preparing their blades, their tools, their minds. This was not suicide to them. It was closure, a chance to bring one more horror to its knees. Rena looked at the star map and drew a line straight through the heart of the enemy nest. When asked what she planned to do, she simply said what we always do: we go in, we break things, we leave nothing standing. And so the team prepared once again, stepping over their losses, not ignoring them, but carrying them forward. Each scar a memory, each breath a promise that this war would not end with negotiations. It would end with silence, because victory always has a price, and The humans were still willing to pay it. The human ship moved without lights, without sound through the thick asteroid field, each stone spinning slowly across the void, like frozen bones of a broken god. Sensors failed to scan ahead, navigation systems flickered and shorted, but the crew was calm, not because they trusted the machines, but because they did not need them. This was not the first time they entered a place built to kill them, and it would not be the last inside. The ship, the halls were filled with silence, broken only by the steady steps of boots on metal. The humans prepared in their own way, not with speeches, not with prayers, but with checks and gestures and quiet understanding. Rena Chase stood at the center of the prep bay, loading a heavy blade onto her back while her team suited up around her, each movement practiced, each breath controlled. They did not ask what the plan was, because they already knew they were going straight into the core of the enemy nest, not to study, not to delay, but to destroy. The target was a massive Varnock hive hidden inside a dead asteroid, its body wrapped in energy storms and organic towers, its heart deep underground, pulsing with strange light. The Alliance had tried to scan it for years without success, and now the humans were going in blind by choice. They did not wait for green lights or perfect conditions. They moved because the time was right, because waiting meant giving the Varnock more time to evolve, more time to spread, more time to become something. Worse, the drop was fast, brutal, and hot. Their pods slammed into the outer skin of the hive, punching through layers of bone and shell and chemical mist within seconds. The team was moving their suits, adapting to the strange fluids, their helmets switching to old modes that didn't rely on tech but on human instinct and raw sensory input. The Varnock responded immediately. Hundreds of creatures pouring through tunnels, walls, shaking from their screams. But the humans did not stop. They did not scatter. They formed a spear and drove straight through them, carving a path with bullets, with fire, with blades that sang when they struck flesh. It was not a battle. It was a message, a storm given shape. Rena led the charge, her voice calm as she gave short commands. Take the high points, clear the walls, collapse the tunnel behind us. No retreat, no delay. Their mission was to reach the Queen Chamber, the source of the hive, the mind behind the swarm, and end it before it could escape, before it could spread. Again, the deeper they went, the stranger things became. The walls began to pulse like living veins. Strange symbols appeared, carved into the bone, not in Varnock code, but in something else, shapes that resembled human language, distorted, as if copied and twisted. Someone asked, "Why are they using our writing?" And Rena did not answer because she was thinking the same thing. They reached the central pit after 2 hours of constant fighting. Blood covered the floor, both black and red, and the air burned like acid. The Queen was not waiting in silence. It was massive, its form changing as it saw them, adapting to mimic their weapons, their movement. It even tried to speak in broken words, phrases taken from intercepted transmissions and battle screams. The humans did not flinch. They attacked without waiting, without fear, even as the Queen screamed and shifted its form into shapes meant to confuse them, even as it tried to use images of fallen soldiers, even as it reached into their coms with whispers that sounded like old friends. They moved forward. Rena climbed the final slope alone, her team covering her from below. The Queen roared, a sound that cracked the rock, but she did not slow. Her blade lit with heat and memory and fire. She jumped high and came down with full force, driving the weapon deep into the center of the creature's chest. The Queen thrashed the hive walls, shook parts of the ceiling, fell around them, but the light in its body began to fade with one final breath. Rena whispered, "This ends now," and twisted the blade. The Queen let out a final sound, then went still, and for the first time in decades of Varnock, hive fell silent, truly silent, not just in sound but in signal and energy. The entire system went dark, as if something ancient had finally been buried. The team stood in the wreckage, panting, bleeding, but alive. They set charges throughout the hive as planned, not to leave a trace, not to give the Varnock a chance to rise again. They left the Queen's body burning behind them and climbed back to the surface where the ship waited, engines ready. As they took off, the asteroid cracked, then burst from the inside, a fireball spinning into the void and disappearing behind them. The mission was done, but something had changed inside that hive, something the Varnock never had before: emotion, fear, memory, even language. It was as if they had been trying to become something more, something human, and that thought followed Rena as she looked out the window toward the stars, wondering if this war had only one enemy, or if something far worse was still waiting to wake. The Varnock threat had been crushed, but the galaxy did not celebrate. There was no victory parade, no songs, no heroes, only tired faces and whispered fears. The humans had done what no other species could, but in doing so they had changed everything, not just the war, but the future itself. The council met once more on Kalros Prime, their faces pale, their voices quiet, trying to decide what to do. With the humans now free, roaming across space with power and purpose, the Chancellor looked at the star map where red dots marked systems saved, but also where new conflicts had started. The humans were not like other allies. They did not ask for praise or territory. Instead, they demanded respect and silence when their work was done. It was clear they wanted space, not chains, freedom, not politics, and the council was unsure if they could give it to them, or if they even should. Captain Syrinx stood silently beside the chamber, watching the debate, his heart heavy, because he had seen the cost behind the cold reports. The lost friends, the burned worlds, and the humans who never stopped moving. Even when the war was over, he thought of Rena. Chase and her team, always ready for the next fight, always waiting for the next hunt-in a distant, quiet planet. The humans gathered one last time around a fire that was small but warm. They spoke little, mostly listening to the crackle of flames and the night wind. The scars on their bodies told stories of battles won and friends lost. They had seen horrors no one else could imagine, but in their silence was a strange kind of peace, a promise that this was not the end, but a new beginning. Rena looked around at the faces she had come to trust more than anything else in the galaxy. Her voice broke the quiet. This war has taken much from us, but it has given us something more. It has given us a chance to be more than prisoners, more than weapons. We are survivors, hunters, and maybe one day something better. Words hung in the air like a fragile hope, and the others nodded in understanding, knowing that tomorrow they would part ways. Some to their homes, some to new missions, but the bond they shared would never break because they had seen the darkness and had chosen to fight through it. Together back in the council chambers, the debate turned to whether the humans were a danger or a gift. Some feared their power, others respected their courage, but all agreed that the galaxy had changed forever. The humans were no longer a secret, no longer the last resort. They were a force that must be reckoned with, a shadow moving silently in the stars. Chancellor finally spoke, her voice steady. We owe the humans our survival, but we must be careful. They are not like us. They are something else, something ancient wrapped in flesh and fury. Outside the council, a new threat was already stirring the darkness, waiting for its chance to rise, and the whispers began again. Find the humans, for when this comes, they will need them once more. Captain Syrinx returned to the human base one last time to find it nearly empty, the warriors gone. Like ghosts into the endless night, he stood alone for a moment. Then a message arrived from Rena, her words simple but clear. We fight not because we want war, but because sometimes war chooses us. The galaxy held its breath, knowing the humans were watching, waiting, ready to rise again when the time came. And no one knew if that time was near or far, only that when the humans were unleashed, the stars themselves would tremble.